It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine, indeed. We're back once again with all your Star Wars news for the week, courtesy of FanthaTracks.com, and we have got lots to discuss this week. Lots of interesting comments with the strike being over and everyone's chatting. So what have we got in store for you tonight? We have, coming up first, we have Alden Ehrenriech talking Solo, a Star Wars story. We went to New York Comic Con last month and we've got some content from that. Free Comic Book Day approaches, and Star Wars Darth Vader issue 1 has been revealed for that day. Daisy Ridley's been talking her new Star Wars film, and she's excited, so we should get excited too. Farthest From 25 is on the horizon. We'll be checking out some of the figures you can get at that show. Dave Filoni has had the barrel of the news this week as well. It's been announced that he's the new Lucasfilm Chief Creative Officer, and we'll be discussing what that means for Star Wars. And on top of that, he's been talking the potential for an Ahsoka Season 2, and the kind of threads that he's developed for that potential. And he's also been talking the characters of Ahsoka and Anakin and what it meant to him and connecting those two characters once again. And from FanthaTracks.com to discuss this with me and much, much more. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Brian, fantastic to be here again. It's great to see the holiday decorating you've been doing on the channel.
We've got to get the graphics out, use them for the whole month.
It's excellent. And we had threats of snow already this morning here in Indianapolis. So
the joys. It's coming
very
my direction.
Real seeing that. Yeah, it's funny seeing that scrolling across the screen, because I was like, ooh, that could have been this morning here.
I believe we're getting it at the end of this week, so I'll be sharing in the cold weather with you, I think, before too long.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. It's the right time of year for that, right?
Yeah, it is. We haven't spoken since the end of Ahsoka, so maybe it's a good time, just because it's going to come up so much across the news of this show. What was your sort of final thoughts on the series?
I loved it. You know, Sabine's my favorite character. I love Thrawn, and especially all the books, but also what Dave had done in Rebels, and how he infused that. Yeah. And where he's, we'll get into it more later, but he left a lot of meat on the bone still, so we can more stories can be built off of it. But at the very least, we've got having the Mortis arc come up is incredible. Having just so many elements of parts of Star Wars that we love all coming out in that, and it just more and more confidence in Dave constantly, because you get something like that and you know that it's real, it's from the heart, but it's very much planned as well. So I loved it.
Yeah. And you mentioned Sabine, and I thought actually she had probably the strongest arc out of all the characters in the shows. Really fantastic performance from Natasha throughout, and I thought it was a really great written arc. And I'm saying that from someone that didn't watch the animation, so she was not entirely new, but effectively a new character to me.
Yeah, I love hearing that from you, but then also knowing that it was a lot of she's dealt with so much in her life as a Mandalorian, growing up with her family, all the things happening around Mandalore and the universe, the galaxy that she's dealing with, and we just got to see new elements there. And hello there, Mr. Newbold, as I see your messages coming across the bottom.
The interesting thing as well, we'll speak about it later, but we don't know if we're getting a season 2. But she brings a lot of potential in terms of her actions, her interactions rather, with the other Mandalorian characters we've encountered across Star Wars TV, whether it be Din Djarin or any of the Mandalorians, Boba Fett. The list goes on. The potential there for storylines with her character is huge, I would say.
Well, and especially, I mean, spoiler alert here, but it is, I mean, she gave Bo-Katan the Darksaber at one point. So, oh, wait, now you're here, the Darksaber's destroyed, and what the heck's going on? So it's fun, and I love how many different crisscrosses of the quilt or the pie or however you want to look at it. It can be very convoluted in a very artistic way, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk Ahsoka a lot in a little bit as well, but we're going to kick off the show. We're going to talk about a film that came out, I think, quite a few years ago. I'm trying to think the year's gone from me, but I think it's 5 years at least. And that is Solo: A Star Wars Story, and Alden Ehrenreich, who's had an amazing year, success at the box office with Oppenheimer. On Netflix, he's got Fair Play, and Cocaine Bear has been one of the most critically acclaimed films of the past year as well. So he's doing great things in his career. Solo: A Star Wars Story undeniably didn't do well at the box office, but it kind of felt like it did well critically amongst Star Wars fandom. I certainly loved it. It was kind of my kind of Star Wars movie. And there's a potential he could be back for a Lando movie that we believes in development as well. And he's been talking about his whole experience on Solo and what it kind of meant to him. Maybe he didn't end up, based on his quote, quite how he wanted it, but he certainly kind of loved the original spirit, how they wanted to make Solo. And I think that's maybe what attracted him to the project. Maybe he wasn't so enamoured by the end of it. I think it must have been a difficult process for everyone, swapping directors midway in the film, taking pretty much a complete 180 in terms of how it was going to be. So undoubtedly, I think a difficult experience from him. And he kind of hints at that in what he's saying. I wondered what your thoughts were and what he had to say.
With Alden, like, and especially when he showed up in Oppenheimer, I was just like, oh yes, he's here. Anything that he does at this point, I love and try to go check out, all because of Solo. I loved him in it. I thought he did a great job, especially considering the circumstances. But I love his awareness in this quote, saying, you know what? I may not have been ready to understand what this was or how this process was going to play out. He's maturing as an artist. He's maturing as an actor, a critical thinker in, very big productions where he's getting these amazing chances. And I don't think he gets those if people don't see his role in Solo as positive.
Yeah.
I still remember when that was coming out, and I was at it was a screenwriting workshop, And there were these two guys that were just like, nope, we won't even go see Solo because of what J.J. Abrams did in the first movie. So that has always stuck with me of, yeah, there are so many fans that probably would have liked it and helped the box office, but they were going against what Lucasfilm had done in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was like shake this guy and say, like, that should not stop you from seeing this one. Everyone can take their own approach, but I think it's unfortunate. I think there were a lot of politics there.
Yeah.
Because I think Solo was a very fun Star Wars movie that provided a lot of background as well.
I think it's worth remembering that if you go back to the original trilogy, so few of the actors actually succeeded out with the bubble of Star Wars, purely because of the pressure of the project. And then you've got a young guy coming in here who's playing young Han Solo, played by Harrison Ford. It's like it's the gambling analogy probably is quite true for the film, but the cards were stacked against him in terms of coming out with his head held high, and I think he can. I think he'd had a tremendous performance as a character. I thought it was a well-written film, and part of me wonders, we've heard from the Lando films, at least in early development, is part of that happening because Solo's actually done well on the streaming service for Disney Plus, and I kind of think it probably is, because if you're the Lucasfilm board or the Disney board, why would you throw money behind a film based on the Solo franchise when it failed at the box office? Unless there was an clear indicator to you that this has got the potential to succeed.
Well, and I think there is that. I don't even know that it's a cult following, but it almost is. It's hashtag make Solo 2 happen. It is, I think people have enjoyed the books. They enjoyed the characters. All of those different elements. And it's almost one of those things now where I imagine going to Celebration, and much like some maligned actors previously, if Ehrenreich shows up and gets introduced at a panel, the place will go nuts.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe real Star Wars fans will embrace, that will show that. And I think Lucasfilm recognizes that. And I don't know. It's stuff happens in the boardroom sometimes that we'll never know about.
Yeah.
But I just have to imagine that there were discussions after Solo didn't have a lot of money and everyone just wanted to look at it with blinders on and say, nope, we're just looking at the film. We're not looking at the outside instances that impacted this as well.
It's kind of maybe equate it a little bit to, comments that Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor have made about coming in and doing a Star Wars celebration and being really hesitant of wanting to do a convention or be in front of the fans, and then actually doing it and experiencing it and realise how much love there is out there for their work and their project, and getting a completely different idea of what this is and what support out there is there for them.
Yeah, and I think they would all, if they brought that entire group out as a panel, every one of them would get a standing ovation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Last month, a few of the Phantom Tracks team headed to New York. We went to New York Comic Con and keep putting out some content we've been gathering when we were there. Over on Phantom Tracks TV on YouTube, you can check out our latest video where we went to the Dean Novo Booth, met with Mark Van Olen, who a lot of you all know from his own YouTube show with the Virtual Cantina. Saw a lot of their new products, got a tour of the booth, and we kind of mentioned Thrawn and Ahsoka earlier, and one of the things we saw when we were there was the Grand Admiral's outfit, which looked absolutely fantastic. If people are looking to cosplay or looking for a way into the 501st and you want a quick step up the ladder, Novo's kind of got you sorted. Great products from that company. The helmets, second to none, and really beautiful stuff. Have you ever had a chance to check out one of their booths at one of the many conventions they attend?
I don't think I fully have, at least not as immersively as the video went.
Yeah.
And great job by Mark interviewing Mark on that and seeing some of the different things that were available, and that they just do such high quality work. I follow them on Instagram, so it's fun to see when they have a new release or they're promoting something that someone's using out in the wild or anything like that. So it's again 501st. It is those elements of cosplay. It's whether it's just a decoration for your house, like it is legit when you see it. So that was fun to see the deep dive there of the people that are making it happen.
Yeah, and people can check out the link on the show notes if they want to check out the video as well. The other part of it I thought was a positive that came out of the video is that they're almost at the end of the back orders from the mess that they kind of inherited from the prior company, who kind of went under and left a whole lot of unfulfilled orders when they took on the license. Part of their commitment was they were going to get all those products made and get through that back order, so people that had paid got their products, and they're pretty much almost there, which is a great sign. So next year they can start to really focus on a lot of new products, and I think Mark kind of hints in the videos there that they've got a lot of really nice ideas lined up as well.
I mean, can we fit our faces in a Professor Hu Yang mask of some sort that just kind of encapsulates us?
We could certainly give it a try.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that could be kind of cool. Something completely wacky and different. I kind of dig that, and I kind of hope that as well as doing the helmets, they kind of get into maybe a little bit more of the maquette kind of things. I've seen people with cosplay Admiral Akbar. I just think that some of that stuff's just incredible what people have built there as well.
And can they do an Ithorian? Can we have a Doc Ondar? Can we have any of those? But I just love the helmets that keep coming out. Like I've got Trapper Wolf's helmet up behind me. That's Black Series, but it's still just cool to see all those things. Like it'd be great I'd love to add a Fennec Shand into here as well, just because there's so many cool, unique helmets and things like that.
Yeah. The high end, they come at a price, but something that is free is our next item. And it's coming next May the 4th of all days. Free comic book day, and we're going to get a Star Wars / Darth Vader special on issue 1. And it's coming written by Charles Soule and Greg Pak. Artists are Robertson and Rosanes, with a cover by Phil Noto. Always love Phil Noto's work on the covers. And great that we're getting a couple of comics for Free Comic Book Day. We've also got the High Republic one, which we covered on last week's show. I'm a big comic fan, and I think that some of the work they're doing on the Darth Vader series in particular has been fantastic, and especially how much of a deep dive into the handmaidens from the prequel films that they've made in there has been something completely different that we haven't had from Star Wars, and should have had from Star Wars a long time ago, and it's great that we're getting that now.
Yeah, getting Save in there, and just how cunning she is, how smart, all of those elements from what we've had in the comics to what's going to come up here next. So it is, May the 4th, can't wait for it. That I do what I can to take that day off.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that I can soak in everything that's happening, because I know I'm going to be distracted otherwise. So it's just like, okay, how can I put myself in a good place to go visit my local comic store, maybe make a Target run, and then check things out online as well as they're coming out. So May the 4th, and knowing that artwork in a story by Charles Soule is coming out as well, that's just...
Yeah. And of course, your inbox will be flooded with all the press releases and promos as well that all the companies do, because it's fastly become a national holiday, or at least that's how I like to consider it.
The international holiday.
Yeah. Come May the 4th this year, we may not have too much Star Wars content to consume, because I imagine they're holding a lot of it back because of the strikes. But very shortly, May the 4th may have a Star Wars film on the horizon, and because Daisy Ridley's film is fast on production, and while she hasn't read a script, she's sat down with the creative people and she's discussed the story, and she described it as not what she expected, but that she's very excited by it. And the kind of idea, things have moved quite quick, because just weeks before Celebration, she sort of wasn't involved in the project, knew nothing about it. Quickly brought in, quickly contracted to it. Obviously, there's been delays with the writer's strike, and I guess less so the actors' side of things, because they haven't moved to a production. But things seem to be moving quickly again, and she's excited. Should we be excited?
Yeah, if she's excited, that's all the more reason for us to be excited. Like, that is, I don't feel like there are a lot of secrets that they're able to hold back. But when this came out and this was revealed, I was just like, this was so out of left field that it was wonderful. I love Daisy Ridley. Rey is such an amazing character. So being able to see now her chance, her opportunity to see what she can do with the Jedi Order, and how much is that going to tie into what's happening in the Filoni-verse of Disney Plus and in his own film? What tie-ins are there? So is Grogu going to know Rey? Is Sabine going to work with her somehow? All of these options, and maybe none of those happen, but it's still really cool to think about, and it helps build that buzz.
Talking Ahsoka again, Jason Syndulla could be a fully fledged Jedi by that time as well. So, lots of potential. Sequel trilogy undoubtedly has its detractors. I'm probably one of them. I don't think I'm the worst. I enjoyed Episode 7 for what it was. Episode 8 wasn't for me at all. I kind of found my peace by Episode 9, knew that it wasn't going to be my thing, but I'll just go there and I'll just enjoy it for what it was. So I have nothing against the character of Rey. I thought the character of Rey was fine. The whole arc of the trilogy wasn't for me. So I kind of hoping, not for a reboot, but just a fresh take on the character. So the comment kind of interests me because it's not what she expected, is kind of what's interesting, because it means it certainly implies that there's a fresh take on the character and where the story's going to go. So it's almost, do we draw a line under the sequel trilogy, which we should do because we're moving on, and it gives the character something fresh and exciting and different to do. And I guess we already know it's going to be based around her trying to rebuild the Jedi. I think that was kind of said at Celebration. So it's going to be interesting.
The ideas and the fact that we're getting to see what Luke is trying to do, and the path that he went with it, I think just adds that much more. So she's been able to learn from him and Leia. And what more, that sequence with Leia was fantastic, and her flashbacks with it as well. And it becomes, okay, what more is here? What more did she learn that we don't know about? And what more is she picking up from the Sacred Jedi texts? So all of these, and then just her day-to-day life of trying to make it happen again. So it's fascinating. It makes me feel like a giddy 10-year-old just wondering everything that could be happening and coming up soon.
Yeah, and of course, the kind of whole backdrop to her arc is the fact that Luke tried to build his own academy, and a lot of it happened off screen, but effectively that failed, and it led to the resurgence of the dark side through Kylo Ren. So it's interesting. It's going to have to weigh heavy on Rey's mind as she tries to build her own academy, the potential for what could happen. And if you're going to create an interesting story, then something bad has to happen. So there's going to be, I think, interesting parallels, I think, between her and the legacy of Skywalker, so to speak.
Well, legacy of Skywalker, but I mean, is there also the legacy of Kylo Ren and
Yeah.
Ben Solo there with how she was brought back to life? So, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know that is defined in Star Wars at this point, where we get to learn a little bit more of, oh, how does this really impact things moving forward?
Yeah. I think the question was also asked of her if it was the first of a trilogy, and she didn't say it wasn't, but she said as far as she's aware, there's one film, and that's it. But I kind of feel it's a case of one film does well, they're not going to say no to doing more.
Yeah, no, I mean, they like to do it in threes, but maybe it's a trio of something else. It's not necessarily that same arc perspective. And maybe Lucasfilm's learning that through what's happening on Disney Plus, or
Yes.
through how people attended the movie. So that doesn't mean that because it worked in the 70s and 80s that it's the right thing moving forward. So they finished that, and maybe they get a little bit of wiggle room now.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up on the news front, some news from here in the UK from one of our upcoming shows. Farthest From, which is kind of a very small regional show in the south of England, but a show that does attract collectors from around the world purely because it is probably the UK's premier vintage collecting show. And if you ever attend, the things you see there astound and amaze you. It really does, and it brings you back to your childhood. This year they've got a special guest, and Pablo Hidalgo is going to be coming over and doing a talk and signings. And this year as well, they're also doing a set of figures, which they're revealing one by one. And so far, we've got 4 revealed. Special repaints from No More Heroes. And we've got Karan, Jabba's Beast Handler, the Imperial Infantry Trooper, the Coruscant Guard, and the Monkal Officer. All beautifully painted. If you want tickets to Farthest From, you can get them at allthecoolstuff.co.uk. Are you a bit of a vintage collector, Ross?
I have some at this point. I had all of them growing up, and I have one of the horror stories of my mom selling them at a garage sale, probably for $5 for the entire box type thing. But I love what they're doing with some of the newer ones. I have friends that collect the originals as well, and always trying to upgrade and find these variants, kind of like these hand painted ones. So that's fun, and that's just another fantastic avenue for collectors to get involved and find ways to connect. And those smaller grassroots shows are so good for fandom. It's just good for people to hang out and do stuff like that. But then getting an opportunity to celebrate Pablo Hidalgo, who does so much, and he gets the ridiculousness of some of the messages that he gets that we can even see on Twitter and social media. He's a hero just for dealing with that. So Pablo, thank you. I hope you enjoy this, and that it is a super positive event for you, and that you do get to connect with a lot of the real fans and those of us who really support you.
Yeah, I think I'll really dig the show because it's unique, it's small, with all the retro vintage stuff. I think he'll be in his element. He'll love it. The other good reason to go is Panther Tracks will be there. Mark Newbold will be doing podcasting live. You can heckle him, throw rotten fruit at him, whatever you want. You have my permission. But yeah,
Brian, are you putting up a prize for the best sign that mocks Mark at the event?
we should. That's a great idea. But I'm trying to think of a prize, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. You could have that Grogu that's just over my shoulder there. It's a hot water bottle of all things.
Is it really?
At night.
I thought you were curled up earlier for a nap and just had that
Yeah.
cuddled into you for a little while.
And there you go, rotten fruit, then dignity. Mark's up for it. So anyone that can come up with a great poster.
So everyone,
help
Mark Newbold would like to refresh or request fresh fruit
Fresh
instead
fruit.
of rotten fruit. Yeah.
Fresh fruit would be nice. But yeah, love Farthest From. I can't get down to it this year because of work commitments, but I think they'll have a great show. I think Pablo will love it. It'll be something completely different for him. And very rare that you get Pablo a chance to do signings with him. He's going to be signing his new book. And always great panels and discussions that Pablo does at past celebrations and the like as well. So a unique chance to meet Pablo, I think, and as you say, meet a great character who puts up with a lot on social media. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. I want to move swiftly on to the next topic because it's a really interesting one, and it was the big news that came out this week through an article on Variety with Dave Filoni, and he revealed that he's been appointed Chief Creative Officer at Lucasfilm, and I'd been hearing for a little while about some sort of structural changes within Disney, within Lucasfilm, some of which has been reported, some of which hasn't, and something that Bob Iger's kind of hinted that they want to do. And but I hadn't heard this specific rumour, although it's been one I think myself, including many others, have sort of been calling for, and that was someone to take up the role of creative and head creative, and everything to channel through that person. And I primarily say that because Kathleen Kennedy, like Pablo, is one of these characters who seems to get a lot of online hate, and yet she's the president of the company. Her background is as a producer. She's not a creative person in terms of writing. That's not her skill set, and yet she seems to get a lot of the criticism if people don't like the creative content. And so I've always had this idea that let the president be the president and look after the overarching care of the company, and let someone come in and do creative. And people have always been saying they want the likes of Dave Filoni to be the president of the company. I don't want him to sit in on meetings discussing HR, insurance, financing. Nope. I don't think that's what Dave Filoni wants to do either. So I don't see why you would put a creative person in the role of president. And so you really did need this creative role created, and they seem to have created that for Dave. He's going to take it up. He's going to have oversight on projects moving forward, and they seem to be also have sort of a little bit of a structure, a little bit of a board almost there, and that he's going to be working alongside Carrie Beck, alongside Kathleen Kennedy as well. So there's going to be a little bit of a structure. So you can imagine him being the lead in that, then sitting down with the producer, with the president, and saying, "These are the projects on the table. This is where the direction I think we should be going." Or that's how I envision it.
Well, and you think about it, even the unofficial brainstorms that are going to happen, if he's around Rick Famuyiwa, if he's around Favreau, all of these people, Deborah Chow, all of these creatives that have come together and helped develop things. But then I think there's also that wonderful aspect of the High Republic and how they put that together of, hey, we're going to bring all these creatives together up front and brainstorm and hash things out and build something that is cohesive that we can nurture along. Just like it seems like Filoni's been nurtured kind of into this role at this point where this makes sense, but you need to keep earning it. So go direct this now, go produce this now, go executive produce. And he keeps crushing it every step of the way, at least in my opinion. And I bet a lot of the listeners and viewers here as well. So it's fun to see them doing it the right way in this world of instant gratification, where here's someone who's worked there 20 years, more than 20 years, and now getting that shot and keep growing into the role. So I'm excited about it. And I think the best Star Wars is going to be in the future because of Filoni and his opportunities and what he has had to earn on his way.
And I think the interesting part is as well, you and I might have an intricate knowledge of everything that's getting released Star Wars wise, content wise, the backstories of all the characters and all that kind of thing. But take Ray's film, for example, the writer from Peaky Blinders coming in to write that. Great writer. What's his knowledge of Star Wars? It's not at our level. So it has to be a great comfort for them to have someone like Dave there that is effectively their Yoda in a way. And then, so here's what I've come up with. And Dave can say to them, hey, but you can't do that, and that doesn't work. And I've actually got this happening here, and this character that could actually do this role, and really help shape, guide them. And you look back, and I was looking at some videos of behind the scenes from the making of the Clone Wars this past week with the Filoni news. It kept coming up in my feed on YouTube. And the way that George mentored Dave, and now effectively you've got Dave in that position where Dave is in George's shoes in effect, and he's going to be mentoring and guiding everybody else coming into Lucasfilm creating this content. And it frees them up and must provide those people with so much confidence just to get on and make the content. And when I was looking back at the Clone Wars, I started thinking about it, and I was thinking, when that project began, how much did George really intend to spend his time on that project? And I kind of think probably very little. But the sheer fun of the experience and him finding someone that probably he saw a little bit of himself in Dave probably made him invest more and more time into the project than he probably ever intended. And that's why it became such a huge thing and so crucial and important story-wise. And he's almost like the lifeblood now of Lucasfilm in many ways. And the only thing I worry about is I don't see who's coming in behind him. Where's the next generation? And so I hope that's a key element of what Dave brings to this role in the creative officer, and that he builds up a pool of talent who he keeps going back to, who don't have writers coming in for one project or directors coming in for one project, that we have them appearing all over the place. And they really become the talent that's coming in behind Dave, because someday someone else is going to have to take on that role.
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, he's been through it. He's experienced it. Maybe it's the George Lucas rule of two. Yeah. You know, where he had Filoni, and now Filoni's going to have to pick one. So it just keeps building off of that. But I think I hope that's something that Dave has seen. And I imagine, just with how secretive he is, that he does have those go-tos already. He knows who he wants to go to, who respects the DNA of Star Wars, the stories being told, and, you know, the absolute, nope, you can't do this. You can push on that, but you can't cross this line. That he knows so well, working directly with George. Yeah. So that's excellent. And then I just, even as you're talking about him working on the Clone Wars, I just always brighten up a little bit, because I think about him wondering if it was the SpongeBob guys playing a trick on him when he got the job. Yeah. And that just always makes me happy and smile, imagining him telling that story.
And the other equation is, if you bring someone in to write an episode of TV and they do well, you bring them back to do some more. Okay, why don't we give them a film project to do? The same on the director side of things. And when you've got someone leading it in a very clear and structured way, like you said, the cohesiveness that person has to bring to the job. So you've got a project on TV that complements what you're doing on the movie front. And I imagine he's going to focus on TV and film, but I would hope that there's consultation with what's going on in the literature world as well. So
that would be huge.
So, you know, you've got a Thrawn comic book coming out at the time that Ahsoka's on air, instead of, you know, releasing it 6 months after it's off the air, or that kind of thing, and you can start exploring these kind of things, and everything sort of becomes a little bit clearer. And I keep asking this question: what is Star Wars? What is the goal? What's the intention with the storyline? What direction are they trying to go in? And it needs that clear kind of path, and everything needs to head in that kind of direction. You can have things in different eras, but it should all have the same ambition. And I kind of hope that that's what he can add. And he's been with the company 20 years. I think it's probably 10 years too late, but never too late in the same hand as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic. It's really hard for me to cheer so much for and be such a fan of someone who loves the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Pittsburgh Steelers so much. But I'd go cheer for either of those teams with Dave, just because he's Dave and what he does in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah. Rule of Farmboy on YouTube asking an interesting question. Do we think the story group's going to work alongside Mr. Filoni? I think so. I think no matter how many times they tell us, there's still a lot of misconceptions about what the story group do. And I kind of view them as being the Star Wars Bible, and the kind of Star Wars go-to people when you need a character or a planet or something, and fact checkers. So I kind of feel that they're almost after the point rather than ahead of the point in the creative process. So they'll get a script when the script's ready and review it at that point, rather than be involved in the creation of that script. So I kind of think both are going to exist. They're probably going to tweak and redo the structure in some way, and probably pull people from different departments to work under Dave, for example. But I see both working in conjunction in many ways.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I love the work that group does and what they bring to the table. And I mean, the more eyes from experts that you can get on it, the less likely you are to have someone creating a new YouTube channel of, hey, here's all the things that got screwed up.
Yeah. And it probably, if you're in the story group, you're probably delighted that there's now a figurehead for the head of creative, and that people aren't looking at you and pointing the finger at you, when your job's to ensure that a story is accurate rather than whether the story's good.
Yeah, because now they can say, talk to the guy in the cowboy hat. Leave us alone.
Yeah. He's going to have to abandon wearing the cowboy hats, and he's going to be too recognisable. Awesome. Real Farmer, I make the point. Carrie Berg's going to be hitting up new storytellers to bring in. Yep, she's the producer background. She's going to sit alongside Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy, and the three of them are going to work together, I guess. Backstops with Kathleen Kennedy as president. She'll be involved in the finance and that elements of it. Dave's going to be bringing her the projects that he thinks should be worked on, and Carrie's going to work on how they bring that to screen as effectively the producer type role.
Good days ahead.
Good days ahead. First decision, perhaps, for them is probably a very tough one. And it's Ahsoka Season 2. And should it happen? I think fans want it to happen from a story perspective. In terms of viewer numbers, the rumour is that the viewer numbers weren't strong. And of course, it had the problem that it came out during a strike, and so there was very little opportunity to support it and promote it, because, and I always say this, it's you're not having to reach the likes of you and me with your promotion for a Star Wars TV series, so we can criticise the promotion of it all we like. The real crucial thing is reaching the mainstream audience, and that's very tough if you're not doing TV, radio, interviews, newspaper, magazine articles, and it's appearing in places where we don't necessarily look, because if we go on fantatracks.com every day, we know exactly what's happening in the Star Wars
Yeah.
galaxy.
Well,
Joe
it's like, I
Blogg's
mean, we're
TV
we're
viewer,
living in Mark Newbolt's brain, so
yeah,
we know what's going on with everything.
yeah. Joe Blogg's TV viewer sadly isn't on Fantatracks every day. They should be, but they're not. And so, is season 2 going to happen? It's a difficult one because they're going to have to balance up the story cost and the financial cost if the view numbers weren't there. And Dave talks extensively about the threads that he's laid for a season 2, and the big thing he wanted to do was get Ezra back into the Star Wars galaxy, and he achieved that. And if I just read a little bit of what he said, and it kind of makes me think that it's potentially not happening, because I love glass half empty. When he says, "I hope one day we'll see it. It could be very cool, but it took a while to get it done, so you never know." And it kind of makes me think he kind of appreciates that maybe a season 2 isn't going to happen, but always in motion is the future. It could
Well,
be.
and he's not telling us anyway unless things are signed.
Yeah,
And even then,
and
he's
that's
not
true.
telling us probably.
And I always say, does it have to be an Ahsoka season 2, or can the story continue in other Star Wars elements? We've seen it with Boba Fett. We saw it with Din Djarin appearing in the Book of Boba Fett, and there was a huge arc there that wasn't Boba Fett's arc that appeared within that storytelling as well. And now he's heading up creative. He's got the opportunities as to how do we handle the story and what's the best medium to continue the story if it's not going to be a season 2 of Ahsoka.
Yeah, even if it's a book at this point, I'll be excited, but I would love to see the live action continue, especially if we get to find out, well, for one, do they recast for Baylan Skoll? And what is the group that's still out in the other galaxy? What's happening there? Because that could be a lot bigger than anything that's happening into the galaxy that we all know so well.
Yeah, you can't bring Thrawn back into the Star Wars galaxy with a shipload of, let's call them Night Sisters, because that's what we think's in the boxes,
Right.
and end up at episode 7 and not address the fact is where's Thrawn in all these coffins.
Absolutely.
So from a creative standpoint, you have to address it story-wise. I don't necessarily buy into the numbers that get reported as to what the streaming services report. Disney know the numbers and they don't report them. That's the kind of bottom line. I also think, and I've noticed, especially with how heavily the promotion of Ahsoka has been over the last 2 weeks since the strike ended, very much feel that Lucasfilm and Disney believe that there's an audience for this, and that a lot of people could be watching Ahsoka for the first time this week because they've seen a lot of promotion about Ahsoka on Variety, for example. And so if you don't necessarily have to have huge view numbers on day one, night of release on a streaming service, if it's doing good numbers throughout the holiday season and into next year, that's enough to get it a season 2. So if you're a fan of Ahsoka, stick it on your TV, on your Disney Plus, because the more people watching it, the more likely it is it's going to come back. And even if you don't sit down and watch it, just hit play. Let's stream in the background.
That's been one of the fun things. Greg Cass, friend of mine, big Star Wars fan, at Ion Cannon, and has his Substack as well. He and his wife have been rewatching Andor recently, and I've rewatched the first and second episode a couple times, just trying to, I love the storytelling, but I also want to keep supporting, because at the end of the day, they're looking at those numbers, and that carries a lot of weight in the discussions of what do we do next. So being able to support that, knowing that we don't have as much new content probably from anywhere for December right now. It's not just in Star Wars, it's all over the place. How do we get people to say, hey, enjoy this? Because to me, Star Wars is the holidays. I want to watch something. I want to wake up early or sit on the couch with the Christmas tree lit in the corner and have that special warm light coming as I'm watching Sabine pet the Loth cat, Murphy, or whatever its name is. And all those special times. And that's what Star Wars is. Family. Star Wars is that fun that makes days, mornings, weekends, holidays special. And I think sometimes that is what has gotten lost. So I loved getting up first thing in the morning before going to work and watching episodes. And then that kind of got pulled away like that. I think it started on Friday mornings, and there was no better way to start the weekend and having that buzz on a Friday. And then it got moved to Wednesdays. Then it got moved, and you kind of lose some of that tradition that you get a chance to build up, because they can't make a decision at the Disney Plus offices about when are we going to put this out. And I don't know that they're fully paying attention to the user experience of that and the specialness of certain things. Because when it's at 9:00 at night, kids aren't watching it, more than likely, or at least they're older kids that are. Morning, maybe they have a better chance. So I just always want that to get factored in. I think that is something that Filoni pays attention to, and we know that George paid attention to, because as much as we love it, it's about kids at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I always say to people, encourage your friends to watch Star Wars. If they don't normally watch Star Wars, and Andor is a great example. It's an easy entry into Star Wars because it's not
So good.
It's unique in itself. And it's almost self-contained in itself. Obviously, it links to Rogue One, but you don't need to know Rogue One to start off with Andor. You don't need to know anything prior to Andor. It's an easy entry. Pick up the Mando DVD and give it to someone for a Christmas present,
Yeah.
That's what being a Star Wars fan is about, is encouraging other people to find the fandom and enjoy the fandom as much as you. And I thought you made a great point on someone just starting to watch Andor, because I met my cousin a couple of weeks ago who, not Star Wars fan as such, but had been watching The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, was loving it, and I said to him, check out Andor, and hadn't heard of Andor, was going to go and check it out, and texted me a few days later to say, I watched the first episode, loved it, and that's what, if we enjoy the content that we're getting, we need more people to enjoy it, because that's how they make more. And we've never had it necessarily in Star Wars before, where we've had to tolerate business, financial decisions as to what content happens and continues. And we kind of haven't to this point under Disney. And we didn't have it under George, because George could make something at a loss if he wanted to make something at a loss, because it was his money and his business. Right. Disney, different. Disney have been spending great money to get Disney Plus going, and so
when they're always the shareholder.
Lucasfilm have had a little bit of a free run to this point. You're now at the crucial point where the shareholders are demanding that Disney Plus become profitable next year. So budgets, costs, what's successful, what doesn't, what we make, when we release it, all now becomes huge things for the Disney board to make. And you're taking that away from the creative people to make business decisions over Star Wars and what happens in Star Wars. And
Brian, are you familiar with the show Face Off?
Yes.
Special effects makeup.
Yep.
All I want to try this for one season on Disney Plus. Do a full season of Face Off and partner with that group, but do it all Star Wars.
Yeah.
So like 1 week it's Wookiees, 1 week it's what's in a cantina, 1 week it's who's the best new bad guy that you can come up with. I think that would be amazing. And that's more live content to go along with, because that's what a lot of these streaming services don't have, is some of that reality TV components.
And that's the one thing I'm amazed at And we have seen some of it, and some of it has been beautifully done on Disney Plus. We haven't seen them deep dive into their archive in terms of documentary making and what goes into making Star Wars. And we do see little glimpses of it, and they have done maybe 1 hour specials, but there's so much more they could do. Another thing, I think Disney Plus, it needs a live channel where they have programmed in a schedule. So you put on Disney Plus, and I'm just going to watch whatever is on air, and it'll flick over to the next show automatically at 9 o'clock, and it'll run till 10, and then it'll go, something else will come on. So people discover new things, because the way that all analytics work on social media is you become caught in your own little bubble, and you get fed content based on what you've currently been watching, rather than maybe necessarily what you would like to watch. And I know, based on what I get fed on Disney Plus or Amazon Prime or whatever, it's just like, I've watched way too much of that program, because now it's all I'm getting is shows connected to that. And
Right.
so having something like that makes discovery really easy is kind of think of where I need to go. And Mark's kind of at the point where he's making the comment, I love what the WWE Network does, and that's exactly where I'm stealing the idea from.
Well, and even team up with StarWars.com. Do This Week in Star Wars, even if it's weekly to start with.
Yeah.
Start with baby steps, but get those integrations going and build that community.
Yeah.
Where right now it's kind of a digital vending machine.
And that's
okay. I'm going to press B7 and get my show. There's no personality exchange there.
And that's what's always surprised me about Disney Plus, is that when they're doing live streams from Celebration, why is it not in the Disney Plus app? Why are they not putting out all these little clips and little shows they put out on YouTube? Why is it not going up on Disney Plus as constant new content, weekly content?
Well, they're probably making money from YouTube as well.
If you
so
want to,
that cannibalizes at some point.
Yeah. If you want to make Disney Plus your hub for Marvel, for Star Wars, for National Geographic, pump the content into it, and make it a destination where I've got to put on Disney Plus to see what's new this week, instead of waiting for an advert to pop up. There's a new show on Disney Plus. Let's put on the Disney Plus app. Make it a destination to go to.
Yeah, and it goes back to that personal connection. It's that, when is the show airing? It is, even that, like, what if there's a 10-minute show leading in to the actual new episode of something? Like, hey, here's what we got last time. Now I'm going to feed you right into the recap, and the episode's going to start from there. Like, we've lost the event nature of things, and Star Wars is an event. Disney is an event. So, and again, this is easy to sit back and say that. I'm not worrying about the cost of it at this point. I'm not worrying about who they're bringing in that one group's going to like or one group may dislike. But there are those opportunities to connect, and that is seeing that smile when someone walks into Batuu, seeing that smile when a little kid is hugging Mickey Mouse for the first time. That's what Disney is. How do they recapitulate that on this streaming service?
Yeah. And it's little things like letting people know that it's coming back, that we're filming The Mandalorian season 4, and it's going to be back next year. Give progress updates, and to do with it, set reports, simple things you could do. You've got an Acolyte TV series and Skeleton Crew coming next year, but you don't have anything on your app to tell people that you've got that coming. Stick the trailer up there, get some behind the scenes content up there, and get people excited about it, because it's about meeting the mainstream people who aren't on StarWars.com or FantaTracks.com or Coffee with Kenobi every week. It's those people that you need to spoon feed them the info in the nicest possible way, to tell them what's coming, to get them excited to, look, there's an Acolyte show coming out next year. I'm going to jump on Google and find out some more about it. It's there's so much more they could do, and I hope it develops. It's certainly, it's going to be interesting when they bring Hulu into Disney Plus, how they start to shape and develop that entire platform, and
Right.
it needs a lot of work still, I believe. But we could talk Disney Plus all day. We've better get on with the news because we've still got some more to cover.
Yeah, right.
What have we got next? In fact, it's actually this is the last news item, so we're not doing too bad. Dave Filoni talking about Ahsoka and Anakin, and this is what we're kind of talking about, promoting the show now, getting people watching the show over the holiday season. And I think that's the reason for doing that, and a big article with Variety and other outlets in terms of let's get a buzz going about the show. Now we can talk about it. And he talked about bringing them back after introducing the idea in Rebels about Ahsoka becoming to understand that Anakin became Darth Vader, and he's put a lot of questions to that understanding, and now being able to play it out on screen in Ahsoka. I didn't know too much about the backgrounds of these characters necessarily in terms of animation because I haven't seen it, but I knew elements of it. So when I watched it, there was episodes like when they had the young Ahsoka, and that was clearly geared towards fans of animation because it was a little bit confusing to me because I wasn't particularly clear as to what story they were trying to tell or where they were.
Right.
But I don't fault that because the reason Ahsoka's on air is because of the fans that have followed the animation. So why not give the fans of animation something beautiful that they'll absolutely love?
And it was so awesome.
And
It was
and the World Between Worlds I knew about as well, but I really dug that scene primarily because of the way that the two actors really connected and the story that they told through that whole scene. And I don't think you needed to be an expert in the animation to understand the relationship between these two characters following that scene. And I think it helped tremendously that Rosario and Hayden are obviously friends in real life as well, and that they were really able to work together beautifully to craft something quite special, I thought. The whole relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka in the series, how did you find it? And especially, we can talk about it now at the very end. Obviously, the bookmarked the series at the very end with Anakin.
Well, even thinking of the final episode of the Clone Wars, in the Ahsoka Vader component of that, and then when they run into each other and sense each other during a fight that I believe was in Rebels, not the Clone Wars. So there are all these elements that those of us who love the animation know about, but it has just been that tease that has been constant. So to just get this laid out and laid bare in such a beautiful way, but still in a way that is, you can still question it. Is this the world between worlds? Is this something different? Is this, and I think Hayden talked about this, or Dave did, about, is this Ahsoka's subconscious? Or is this actually happening? So there's still so much that can be dissected and so many directions it can go. I'm just looking straight forward as, hey, this was World Between Worlds. This is what they got to do. And we benefited as fans being able to see these flashbacks, being able to see, the clone troopers in action and all the different elements. So I love their relationship, and I love how I feel like this elevated it and took it further, and that we're going to keep learning more. And you think about Book of Boba Fett when Ahsoka is with Luke, and Luke's asking her questions, and she's like, "You'll figure it out. What does your heart tell you? What do you see in the Force that you should do here?" So I think it's the lessons that she constantly gets, that she's starting to pay it forward some.
Yeah. I'm going to end the show by asking you the most difficult question possibly. Keep it to last. If you were just made creative content officer of the company, where would you be going in terms of film, and where would you be going in terms of TV? What's the decisions that you feel is needed in the direction that you feel it needs to go in?
I think some of that's defined already. So if what is there between the shows and the films is already enacted and I'm just kind of adding more things, I love what they were trying to do with the Star Wars story, Han Solo, a Star Wars story. I want the Asajj Ventress one. I want some of these incredible characters that we haven't got the full deep dive in yet, that still intersect and tie into these other ones. So, all of a sudden, if you're doing Asajj, you've got Count Dooku in there. You've got other elements that can bring in some of the great writing that has happened. But being able to do that, also wanting to, film-wise, I think it depends what they're doing with Rey. It depends what we're doing with those different elements. I want a little bit more punk rock in all these things. I want the Alphabet Squadron. I want more elements of that. I want to know what Chasna Chaddock is doing now. I want to know, does Hera keep in touch with any of them at this point? And when do we learn that, or do those things intersect? So just because I love the books, and everything that they do at Disney Press and Del Rey and DK and all of those, where do those elements, does the story group get empowered to try and bring those in a little bit more? Do they get to pitch Filoni on, hey, it'd be really cool if this book got tied into here some? That's when I think it is just like the perfect gift the whole way around.
Yeah. For me, I'll throw out my ideas as well. If you're on the film side, you have to do something in the Old Republic era, very much Game of Thrones-esque, and I think you define that in itself. If the Acolytes in the High Republic era, that's at the height of the Jedi, and I think that's where you base everything that's Jedi related, when the Jedi are huge and powerful. And I kind of think if you're going beyond the sequel trilogy, I don't want to see the Jedi in their hundreds and thousands again. I would much rather it be unique and small and very different and really character driven. And I think you then have three quite clear kind of different genres all within Star Wars. A very classic Luke, a very much Jedi in power, and a very much Jedi struggling where perhaps the dark side are more on top. I think we need an enemy in Star Wars that survives beyond just a film or two films or three films. Something that remains constant. And I know we have that in terms of the Sith, but you can't keep destroying them and bringing them back. You've kind of got to have something in the background that allows a continuity there. You need to create an enemy that's an ever-present. And on the TV world, I'm more interested in doing things that are slightly more experimental. I loved your idea, Asajj, and doing something different with characters that wouldn't normally necessarily lead. Less humanoids, more aliens. And maybe even the Night Sisters deserve their own series, because you could do something completely visually and story-wise completely randomly different.
Yeah.
And I think you start defining different eras of Star Wars and the type of content in those different eras, you can actually play around and have a lot of very different, unique stuff. And without too much change and effort. I'm just looking at some of the comments.
And Brian, this becomes here's another chance. Wait, let's see. Anakin. Yeah. So again, just like the details that they get into. So seeing the comment there of who is included, who isn't included as new things happen, that's a tough decision. And that's where I hope that Dave Filoni is going to say, you know what, this wouldn't make sense here. Or if he's bringing something up, that he sets up a structure where it's okay for people to maybe not question, but at least have constructive criticism over, hey, does this really make sense in the long term?
Yeah.
So again, that creativity, the best creativity is collaborative in my mind, because you're always going to learn something from someone. That doesn't mean you take everything, but you may adjust something, like even if you're stubborn and say, nope, I'm going to do it this way. Like, you know what, but I'm going to put this little twinge to it. And that's going to be the accent that stands out the most at the end of the day. So, yeah, I love that I love where we're going with things. I love the idea, even with the story group or different writers, maybe that's a reality series where just, hey, here, this is the Star Wars pitch, and who's going to be able to pitch? And maybe it's a comic book, maybe it's an animated, a 3-run animated series or something like that, but taking it through the process and letting people who have nothing to do with Lucasfilm proper get involved in the process, and people being able to cheer them on, and maybe the great new character, the next Ahsoka, comes out of that.
And I think the most important thing, I think it needs to be said, and I think the Star Wars fans have to hear it, is being told, we're going to make a lot of content and it's going to be wide and varied, and you know what? You're not going to like it all.
Yeah.
You know? And as long as there's always content coming through that you're enjoying, you're going to remain a fan, but you have to appreciate and respect, you know, that show's not for me. And I enjoyed Ahsoka for what it was, but it wasn't a show targeted at me because I don't follow the animation. I can still enjoy it as a Star Wars fan, but I can then go on social media and see people going wild about it, and I'm like, okay, I didn't really enjoy the episode that much. But it doesn't mean I then need to go in and hammer that person and criticize that person and be so negative. So, okay, that show's not for me, but other fans are absolutely loving it, which is fantastic. I can't wait till season 2 of Andor, and that's good. You know, and I think we have to behave like that a little bit better. And I think Lucasfilm just have to be clear and say, you know what, I don't care if you don't enjoy it all, because we're not making content that's designed for everybody to enjoy it all of the time. Because if we're doing that, we're making dull content.
Yeah, and it is and that's what sparks conversation. Yeah. But then there are people that have learned to monetize dissent.
And that's
just
the
negative for the sake of being negative and trying to poke the bear a little bit. But those are the days that we're living in right now. So it's a matter of paying attention. It's a matter of, you know, who are you as a person? Who are you as a critical thinker? And how you want to approach something that should be enjoyable.
Yeah.
And if it's not, maybe you take a step away and find something that you do like a little bit more.
Mark makes a good point. It's a smorgasbord of content. Fanta tries to do its best to see the best in all of it. And I even say that because I hate droids, but I liked Hu Yang. I have to admit it. I thought he was a great character. And
so we're getting you the cosplay outfit first.
Okay, I'll wear the cosplay outfit. I probably can't do the waist, but
you'll be like the Elder Thrawn and be a little bit wider.
I can kind of do the accent. But you can find the best in everything, and you can watch Star Wars and say, okay, that's not for me, but look at the fun and enjoyment other people are having watching it. So how can you be negative about something that people are enjoying? It's that's life. And that's probably a great note to end the show. Ross, it's been brilliant having you on the show. Love talking Star Wars with you. It's been great going over this news this past week. Things are getting exciting again, I think. There's kind of been this, and I think this is what affected Ahsoka. Maybe there's been this little bit lull and post-celebration, this kind of Star Wars fandom's been a little bit in the depressions a little bit, and lost their ability to find the fun and things. And I kind of felt this past week things are starting to bubble up a little bit and get a little bit more exciting.
The spark of hope. Right?
Yeah, we're into the holiday season. So much things are going to be happening next year. We should start getting excited about Star Wars again, I think.
No, it is. I have books to catch up on. I'm just looking for a little bit of downtime to enjoy them all and do some more writing there for Fantha Tracks.
Yeah. Always great to have you on the show, Ross. We'll get you back on very soon. I won't be back next week because I'm going out celebrating my birthday, even though that was in October. Just very late in the party. And I'll be back on the 10th of December. So we'll be getting into the holiday spirit very much more so by then, I think. Ross, great having you. We'll chat soon. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and thoughts, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.